The emergency beacon cut through space like a desperate scream. Captain Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display aboard the Earth Defense Force flagship Titan's Fury, watching the alien distress signal pulse with increasing urgency. The message was simple, transmitted in broken galactic standard. "Help us, they come, we die, children first." "Ma'am, we're picking up 17 more distress signals from the Kepler 442 system," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "Same pattern, same desperation." Sarah's jaw tightened. 3 months ago, humanity had finally been contacted by the Galactic Council after decades of searching the stars. The meeting had been interesting. The aliens were terrified of humans. They called Earth a death world, and its inhabitants apex predators masquerading as a civilization. The Council had made it clear that humanity was to remain quarantined in their solar system. Too dangerous, too unpredictable, too violent for civilized space. "Admiral Morrison is requesting immediate video conference," Torres announced. The hologram of Admiral James Morrison materialized in the center of the bridge. His weathered face showed the strain of command, but his eyes burned with determination. "Captain Chen, I assume you're monitoring the Kepler signals?" "Yes, sir. 17 civilian colonies under attack. The transmissions suggest complete orbital bombardment. No military targets, just population centers." Morrison's expression darkened. "Intelligence suggests the attackers are the Vorthak Empire. They've been expanding aggressively for the past 50 years. The Galactic Council has been diplomatic in their response." Sarah understood the implications immediately. "They're doing nothing." "Correct. They've filed formal complaints and requested the Vorthak attend mediation sessions next year." Morrison's voice dripped with disgust. "Meanwhile, entire civilizations are being exterminated." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's systems and the continuous pulse of alien distress signals. Sarah looked around at her crew. These were Earth's finest military personnel, trained for space combat, hardened by years of preparation for humanity's eventual expansion to the stars. "Sir," Sarah began carefully, "our quarantine restrictions are no longer in effect," Morrison interrupted. "As of 30 minutes ago, the President invoked Emergency Protocol 7. Humanity will not stand idle while innocent civilians are slaughtered." He paused, his voice becoming steel. "Captain, you're to assemble Task Force Death World. You have full authorization to use any means necessary to stop the Vorthak assault." Sarah felt her heart race. Task Force Death World had been a theoretical formation, designed in secret by Earth's military planners. It represented the full might of human space warfare capability, built on principles that had terrified the Galactic Council. "Understood, Admiral. What's our fleet composition?" Morrison smiled grimly. "Everything we've got: the Titan's Fury, Humanity's Wrath, Stellar Vengeance, Iron Will, and Last Stand. 5 dreadnoughts, each carrying a full complement of fighters and marines. Additionally, you'll have 12 destroyers, 8 cruisers, and 4 support vessels." The numbers were staggering. Humanity had built their space fleet in secret, using technology reverse-engineered from crashed alien scouts and driven by the paranoid assumption that first contact would mean war. The Galactic Council's fear of humans had only validated those preparations. "Sir, the Galactic Council will not appreciate our intervention." "The Galactic Council can file a formal complaint," Morrison replied coldly. "We'll attend their mediation session next year. In the meantime, we have civilians to save." The Admiral's hologram flickered out, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and her crew. Around the bridge, officers were already moving with purpose, bringing the ship to battle readiness. "Torres, signal the fleet. All ships are to form up for immediate jump to Kepler 442, combat formation." "Ma'am, estimated time to target?" Sarah checked the navigation display. The Kepler system was 12 light-years away. Using their new quantum tunnel drives, they could make the jump in 6 hours. 6 hours, Lieutenant. Use the time to run full combat diagnostics on all systems. As the crew bustled with activity, Sarah pulled up the classified files on human military doctrine. The Galactic Council had been horrified to learn that humans had developed their space warfare tactics based on their own bloody history. Where other species sought to disable and capture, humans sought to destroy utterly. Where aliens aimed for military targets, human doctrine emphasized psychological warfare and total victory. The Vorthak Empire had conquered 47 star systems in the past 50 years, using overwhelming force against populations that followed galactic warfare conventions. They relied on fear, targeting civilian populations first to break resistance before facing military opposition. They had never faced an opponent that considered such tactics merely Tuesday. "Ma'am," called Ensign Park from the tactical station, "we're receiving additional intelligence from Earth Command. The Vorthak force consists of approximately 200 ships, including 12 battle cruisers and supporting vessels." Sarah nodded. The numbers were daunting, but not impossible. Human ships were smaller than their alien counterparts, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with weapons that prioritized lethality over restraint. "Park, load the tactical profiles on Vorthak vessels. I want to know their weaknesses." "Already on it, ma'am. Their ships are heavily armored but rely on energy shielding. Their weapons are plasma-based, designed for long-range bombardment. Close-quarters combat appears to be not their strength." Of course it wasn't. Sarah almost smiled. Humanity had developed their space combat doctrine, assuming they would always be outnumbered and outgunned. Every human ship was designed to get close, hit hard, and hit fast. They called it knife fighting in space. "Ma'am," Torres spoke up again, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding we abort our mission and return to quarantine immediately." "Response, Captain?" asked her XO, Commander Williams. Sarah looked at the continuing stream of distress signals from Kepler 442. Each pulse represented thousands, maybe millions of alien civilians facing extinction while their government filed paperwork. "No response, Commander. We have civilians to save." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Weapons systems were checked and double-checked. Fighter squadrons ran through attack patterns. Marines reviewed boarding procedures and urban combat tactics. The human fleet moved through space like a pack of wolves, silent and deadly. Sarah spent the time reviewing everything they knew about the Vorthak Empire. They were reptilian humanoids, about 8 feet tall, with a rigid hierarchical society based on military conquest. They viewed other species as either vassals or resources. Their expansion had been methodical and brutal, but they had never faced serious resistance. "Ma'am," Torres announced, "we're approaching the Kepler system. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures consistent with orbital bombardment." Sarah moved to the central command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These people had trained for this moment their entire careers, but none of them had expected it to come like this. "All stations report readiness. Weapon systems online and ready. Shields at maximum. Fighter squadrons prepared for launch. Marines standing by for boarding operations. Navigation ready for combat maneuvering." Sarah took a deep breath. In a few moments, humanity would announce itself to the galaxy, not as the quarantined Deathworlders, but as the species that would not tolerate genocide. "Take us out of Quantum Tunnel. All ships. Combat Formation Delta. Prepare for immediate engagement." The stars shifted as the human fleet dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Immediately, the tactical displays lit up with contacts. The Vorthak fleet was spread throughout the system, methodically bombarding the inhabited planets. "My God," whispered Ensign Park. "They're not even trying to capture anything. They're just destroying everything. Sarah watched the tactical display with growing anger. The Vorthak ships were positioned in high orbit around 3 different planets, pouring plasma fire down onto the surface. No military strategy, no tactical objectives. Just extermination. Ma'am, we're being hailed by the Vorthak command ship. On screen, the holographic display shimmered, revealing a massive reptilian face with cold, yellow eyes. When it spoke, the universal translator rendered its hissing voice into cold, mechanical English. Unknown vessels. You will identify yourselves and withdraw immediately. This system is under Vorthak control. Sarah stood slowly, making sure the alien could see her clearly. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You will cease your bombardment of civilian targets immediately and surrender your vessels. The Vorthak commander's eyes widened slightly. Even across the galaxy, humanity's reputation had spread. Humans, the Deathworlders, you are far from your quarantine zone. And you are about to be far from the living, Sarah replied coldly. This is your only warning. Cease bombardment and surrender. The alien's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. You bring 30 ships against our 200. Your reputation is greatly exaggerated, human. Witness the fate of those who oppose the Vorthak Empire. The transmission cut off, and immediately the Vorthak fleet began to reposition. They were forming a classic battle line, preparing to engage the human fleet with overwhelming firepower from maximum range. Sarah smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. All ships, she broadcast to the human fleet, weapons free. Show them why they should have stayed afraid. The Battle of Kepler 442 was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Vorthak fleet moved with the confidence of predators who had never encountered a worthy opponent. Their massive battle cruisers formed a wall of steel and plasma across space, weapons charging for what they assumed would be a quick extermination of the foolish humans. They were about to learn why the Galactic Council had quarantined humanity. All ships, execute Pattern Omega, Captain Chen ordered. Maximum burn. Take us in fast and hard. The human fleet exploded into motion. Where the Vorthak ships moved with ponderous deliberation, the human vessels danced through space like fighters, their engines pushed far beyond what any other species would consider safe. The gap between the fleets closed at a rate that made the Vorthak sensors scream warnings. Ma'am, lead Vorthak ships are opening fire, reported Ensign Park. Plasma bombardment, maximum intensity. The space between the fleets lit up with streams of superheated plasma, but the human ships weren't where the Vorthak expected them to be. Years of training against overwhelming odds had taught humanity to never fight fair, never fight predictably, and never give the enemy what they wanted. Evasive maneuvers, Pattern 7, Sarah commanded. All ships, begin the dance. The human fleet scattered like a school of fish, each ship following seemingly random paths that somehow never brought them into each other's firing lines. Plasma bursts that should have vaporized human vessels instead struck empty space as the fleet wove between the attacks with impossible precision. On the main screen, Sarah watched the Vorthak commander's expression change from confident superiority to confusion, then to something approaching concern. The reptilian had expected the humans to either flee or charge straight ahead in a suicidal attack. Instead, they were doing something no other species had ever attempted against the Vorthak Empire. They were getting closer. Range to primary target? Sarah asked. 15,000 kilometers and closing fast, ma'am. The Vorthak fleet was trying to adjust their formation, but their ships were too large, too slow. They had been designed to fight opponents who followed galactic conventions, who engaged at long range with massive exchanges of firepower until one side's shields failed. Humanity had thrown the rulebook out the window before they'd even read it. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the Vorthak command ship, Torres announced. Audio only. The hissing voice of the alien commander filled the bridge, and for the first time there was uncertainty in its tone. "Human vessels, your tactics are unusual. You cannot hope to penetrate our shields at close range. Our armor is impervious to your primitive weapons." Sarah smiled coldly. "Mr. Park, show them how wrong they are. Target their command ship, all forward batteries. Fire." The Titan's fury unleashed hell. But instead of the energy weapons the Vorthak expected, the human ship fired something far more terrifying. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to 30% of light speed. Humanity had learned long ago that sometimes the oldest weapons were the most effective. The Vorthak command ship's energy shields, designed to disperse plasma and laser fire, might as well have been tissue paper. The tungsten core projectiles punched through the barriers like they didn't exist and slammed into the alien vessel's hull with the force of nuclear weapons. The massive Vorthak ship staggered under the impact, its hull cracking open like an egg. Atmosphere vented into space in glittering clouds as the alien crew struggled to understand what had just happened. "All ships, weapons free," Sarah broadcast. "Hit them hard, hit them fast, hit them now." The human fleet opened fire as one. Kinetic weapons, plasma torpedoes, and experimental rail guns spoke in unison. The Vorthak formation, so confident moments before, began to disintegrate under the onslaught. But Sarah wasn't interested in just winning a battle. She was here to save civilians and send a message to the galaxy. The Vorthak ships bombarding the planets below were her primary concern. "Williams, take us down. I want to engage the bombardment fleet directly." "Ma'am, that will put us in the gravity well." "If we need to retreat, we won't need to retreat, Commander. Trust me." The Titan's fury dove toward the nearest planet, followed by half the human fleet. On the surface below, alien cities burned under Vorthak plasma fire. Millions of innocent beings were dying while their government followed proper diplomatic channels. Today, those beings would learn that not all species believed in diplomatic solutions to genocide. "Ma'am, the bombardment fleet is trying to withdraw," Park reported. "They're pulling back from planetary orbit." Sarah's expression hardened. "Negative. They don't get to run. Not after what they've done. All ships, intercept pattern. Don't let a single one escape." The human ships moved with deadly precision, cutting off the Vorthak retreat routes like wolves surrounding a herd. The alien vessels, designed for bombarding helpless planets, found themselves trapped between the planet's gravity well and an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. The first Vorthak ship to try breaking through the human cordon died in seconds. The Stellar Vengeance and Iron Will caught it in a crossfire that reduced the massive vessel to debris and heartbeats. The message was clear. There would be no escape. "This is impossible," came the panicked transmission from another Vorthak ship. "Human vessels, we demand safe passage under galactic law. We are withdrawing from the system." Sarah opened a channel to all Vorthak ships in the system. When she spoke, her voice carried the cold fury of a species that had faced extinction and chosen to fight instead. "Galactic law? You're talking about galactic law while you murder civilians? While you burn cities full of children?" She paused, letting the silence stretch. "There is no safe passage. There is no withdrawal. There is only justice." The battle that followed was less a fight than an execution. The human ships moved through the Vorthak bombardment fleet like predators among prey. Each alien vessel that had participated in the planetary bombardment was hunted down and destroyed with methodical precision. But Sarah noticed something else happening on her tactical display. The main Vorthak battle fleet, the ships that had been engaging her task force in open space, were beginning to withdraw toward the system's edge. "Ma'am," Torres called out, "we're receiving a general broadcast from the Vorthak fleet commander. It's going out to all ships in the system." "Let's hear it." The alien's voice was different now. Gone was the confident superiority. In its place was something that might have been fear. All Vorthak vessels. General withdrawal. Repeat. All vessels withdraw immediately. Do not engage the human fleet in close combat. Repeat. Do not engage humans at close range. Sarah felt a moment of satisfaction. The lesson was being learned, but it was too late. Mr. Park, what's our status on the bombardment fleet? 17 ships destroyed, ma'am. 3 remaining, but they're trapped in the gravity well. Finish them. The last 3 Vorthak ships died without ceremony, their hulks joining the debris field that now orbited the planet they had been trying to destroy. Below, the bombardment had finally stopped. Emergency broadcasts from the surface were already reporting rescue efforts beginning. Ma'am, the main Vorthak fleet is requesting parley, Torres announced. Sarah considered this. The primary objective had been accomplished. The bombardment had stopped, and the immediate threat to civilians was over. But she had a larger mission now. The galaxy needed to understand that some lines could not be crossed. On screen, the Vorthak commander appeared again, but the arrogant predator was gone. In its place was something that might have been a broken being. Its ship showed damage from human weapons, and its yellow eyes held a new understanding. Human commander, it began carefully, we miscalculated. Your species' reputation appears to have been understated. Sarah stared at the alien for a long moment. 200 ships, Commander. You brought 200 ships to exterminate innocent civilians. How many other systems have you done this to? The alien's silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, Sarah continued. You're going to withdraw all Vorthak forces from this system immediately. You're going to provide full reparations to the surviving population. And you're going to spread word throughout your empire that human space is now under our protection. Human space? But your species is quarantined to a single system. Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. Not anymore. As of today, human space includes any system where innocent civilians are threatened by genocidal maniacs. That means this system is now under Earth's protection, as are the 46 other systems you've conquered. The Vorthak commander's eyes widened. You cannot be serious. The Galactic Council will never... The Galactic Council had their chance to stop you, Sarah interrupted. They chose diplomacy over action, paperwork over lives, so now they get to deal with the consequences. The alien was quiet for a long moment, clearly receiving communications from elsewhere in its fleet. When it spoke again, its voice was carefully controlled. What are your terms for our withdrawal? Sarah had been thinking about this during the battle. Destroying the Vorthak fleet would send a message, but it wouldn't solve the larger problem. The galaxy needed to understand that humanity was no longer going to stand idle while atrocities were committed. Full withdrawal of all Vorthak forces from occupied systems, reparations to be paid to all conquered populations, and a guarantee that no Vorthak ship will ever again target civilian populations. And if we refuse? Sarah's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop. Then we hunt down every Vorthak ship in the galaxy and destroy them one by one. Your choice, Commander. The alien stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. We accept your terms. But know this, human. The galaxy will not tolerate your expansion. Other species will unite against you. Let them try, Sarah replied. But next time, they might want to make sure they're not defending genocide when they do it. The transmission ended, and Sarah watched as the surviving Vorthak ships began their withdrawal from the system. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly, processing the enormity of what had just happened. They had just announced humanity's arrival on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. The consequences would be far-reaching and potentially catastrophic for human civilization. But as Sarah looked at the planet below, where the bombardment had finally stopped and rescue efforts were beginning, she knew they had made the right choice. Sometimes, doing the right thing meant accepting terrible risks. Today, humanity had chosen to be the species that would not tolerate genocide, regardless of the cost. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler 442, the Galactic Council chambers erupted in chaos. Representatives from 300 species shouted, hissed, clicked, and whistled their outrage in a dozen different languages, while the translation systems struggled to keep up. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez sat calmly at the human delegation table, watching the pandemonium with detached interest. She had been Earth's first and only ambassador to the Galactic Council, appointed when humanity was still considered a quarantined curiosity. Now she represented the most feared military force in the galaxy. "Order! Order!" The council speaker, a crystalline being from the Alteran Collective, chimed desperately. Its translucent body flickered with stress patterns as it struggled to restore calm. "The emergency session will come to order." Gradually, the chaos subsided. 300 pairs of alien eyes turned to focus on Elena, and she could feel the mixture of fear, anger, and desperate confusion radiating from the assembled representatives. The speaker's voice resonated through the chamber. "Ambassador Rodriguez, the Human Federation stands accused of violating galactic law, breaking quarantine, and committing acts of unprovoked aggression against a sovereign star empire. How do you answer these charges?" Elena stood slowly, her movement causing several representatives to flinch backward. The fear response was almost universal now. Word of what human warships could do had spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Unprovoked aggression? Elena's voice carried clearly through the chamber. "Speaker, I believe there has been some misunderstanding. Earth responded to a distress call from civilians under attack. The same distress call that this council received 3 hours before we did." Uncomfortable silence greeted this statement. The draconian representative, a towering reptilian being with scales that shifted between gold and green, rose from its seat. "The Galactic Council does not respond to isolated incidents with military force. We follow proper diplomatic channels." "Isolated incidents," Elena repeated slowly. "Is that what you call the systematic extermination of 47 star systems?" The Vorthak expansion was being addressed through appropriate channels, the Draconian insisted. Mediation sessions were scheduled. Diplomatic solutions were being pursued. Elena nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, I read the schedule. The mediation sessions were set to begin next year. Very thorough planning. I'm sure the civilians being incinerated from orbit appreciated the attention to detail." A new voice entered the discussion. The ethereal representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, spoke in harmonics that the translators rendered as music. "Ambassador Rodriguez, humanity's actions have destabilized centuries of carefully maintained galactic peace. Your species was quarantined specifically because of your propensity for violence." "Peace," Elena said the word like it tasted bitter. "You call systematic genocide peace, as long as it follows proper procedures? You call planetary bombardment stability, as long as the right forms are filed?" The chamber erupted again, but this time Elena didn't wait for order to be restored. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "For 300 years, this council has maintained its peace by allowing strong species to prey on weak ones, as long as they did it politely. You've watched genocide after genocide, conquest after conquest, always finding excuses to avoid action. Well, that era is over." The speaker's crystalline form flickered rapidly. "Ambassador, humanity cannot simply declare themselves the galactic police. The balance of power was 47 extinct civilizations," Elena interrupted. "The balance of power was children burning in their homes while this council debated meeting schedules. That balance is broken now, and we broke it deliberately." A new representative entered the discussion. The Hive Collective's speaker, an insectoid being that spoke for trillions of drones, clicked its mandibles before speaking. Human military capabilities are concerning. Our analysis suggests your species possesses weapons and tactics unknown to galactic civilization. We demand full disclosure of your military technology. Elena laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the vast chamber. You demand? 3 weeks ago, you wouldn't even let us leave our home system. Now you're making demands? She shook her head. The age of making demands of humanity ended when Captain Chen opened fire on the Vorthak fleet. Your species threatens the fundamental order of galactic civilization, the draconian representative hissed. We cannot allow a race of Deathworld barbarians to destabilize everything we have built. Elena's expression hardened. What you built was a system that protected predators and abandoned their prey. What you built was a civilization that valued procedure over life. What you built was broken long before we arrived. She activated her personal hologram projector, filling the center of the chamber with tactical displays from the Battle of Kepler 442. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as human ships tore through the Vorthak fleet with ruthless efficiency. This is what you're afraid of, Elena continued. Not our weapons, not our ships, not our tactics. You're afraid that we've proven your entire system wrong. You're afraid that when faced with evil, the correct response isn't diplomacy or mediation or committee meetings. Sometimes, the correct response is overwhelming force applied with precision and purpose. The ethereal representative's harmonics shifted to a discordant tone. Violence only breeds more violence. Your actions have made the galaxy less safe, not more. Have they? Elena challenged. The Vorthak Empire has withdrawn from all occupied systems. Reparations are being paid to survivor populations. 3 other aggressive species have canceled their expansion plans. Please explain how that makes the galaxy less safe. The chamber fell silent. Several representatives were clearly consulting with their governments through quantum entanglement communicators, seeking new instructions for a situation that had gone far beyond their prepared talking points. The speaker tried to regain control. Regardless of the outcomes, humanity's violation of quarantine cannot be ignored. The Council demands that human forces return to their home system immediately. Elena smiled, and several representatives actually shuddered at the expression. Speaker, I think you misunderstand the current situation. Humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist. We are no longer seeking approval from species that stood idle during genocide. We are no longer confined to our home system by anyone's authority but our own. You cannot be serious, the draconian representative sputtered. One species cannot simply declare independence from galactic law. Watch us, Elena replied simply. The implications of her statement rippled through the chamber like a shock wave. Representatives began speaking in urgent whispers to their staffs, while others transmitted frantic messages to their home worlds. The speaker's form flickered with what might have been panic. Ambassador, surely we can reach some accommodation. The Council is willing to discuss modified quarantine terms, perhaps limited expansion rights. No, Elena cut the speaker off. You seem to think this is a negotiation. It isn't. This is a notification. Humanity is informing the Galactic Council that we are expanding into space under our own authority. Any species that wishes to coexist peacefully will find us cooperative neighbors. Any species that chooses to prey on civilians will find us to be their worst nightmare. A small, bird-like representative from the Avian Confederacy spoke up in a voice like crystal chimes. And if the Council orders military action to contain human expansion. Elena's expression didn't change, but her next words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then the Council will learn what Captain Chen's fleet was designed to fight. The Vorthak were conquest specialists who preyed on civilians. You would be mobilizing against a species that has spent centuries preparing for war against superior numbers. She paused. I would recommend against that course of action. The chamber erupted in chaos once more, but Elena ignored it. She had delivered her message. The age of humanity hiding in one star system was over. The age of the Galactic Council deciding humanity's fate through committee votes was finished. The speaker finally managed to restore a semblance of order. Ambassador Rodriguez, the Council requires time to consider these developments. We call for a recess while member species consult with their governments. Elena nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. While you're deliberating, human fleets are establishing defensive positions around the systems we've liberated. We wouldn't want any unfortunate misunderstandings while the Council decides how to respond to our notification. As the session dissolved into smaller groups of frantic discussion, Elena gathered her materials and prepared to leave. The avian representative approached her table, moving with obvious caution. Ambassador Rodriguez, the small being said quietly, my species has been under threat from the Talon Empire for decades. The Council has been slow to respond. Would humanity consider extending protection to other endangered civilizations? Elena looked down at the bird-like alien, seeing genuine hope in its large, dark eyes. We're not interested in building an empire or collecting vassal states, but if your people are under threat from species that target civilians, then yes. We will help. The avian representative's feathers ruffled with what Elena had learned was their equivalent of relief. Thank you. The Confederacy will remember this. As Elena left the council chambers, she reflected on how much had changed in 3 weeks. Humanity had gone from quarantined curiosity to galactic power broker through one act of defiant compassion. The galaxy would need time to adjust to the new reality. Some species would accept humanity's expansion and benefit from human protection. Others would challenge it and learn why Captain Chen's fleet had been built for war. But one thing was certain: the age of standing idle during genocide was over. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as conquerors or diplomats, but as the species that would not tolerate evil, regardless of the consequences. In her private quarters aboard the human embassy ship, Elena composed her report to Earth. 3 words dominated her message. Mission accomplished. The galaxy now knows that when innocent civilians call for help, humanity will answer. Outside her viewport, human patrol ships moved through space with deadly grace, carrying that message to every corner of the galaxy. The Deathworld Armada had been awakened, and the stars would never be the same.